AskReddit by Superbad 1765. What's an early sign your relationship is over? I think when you just don't care anymore. You don't care to fight with them. You don't care to be intimate. You don't care to make an effort. The opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference. When you think twice before sharing something that makes you happy or sad with them. Have been divorced. This one. When my ex and I were beginning to separate, I just found myself not having any desire to send them something. A song, a meme, an article I thought they would enjoy. It would occur to me they would like it, but I was no longer invested in them or their happiness and found myself not bothering to hit 2 buttons to share it. Even enjoyable things we would do together I would just do on my own and be content. That's how I knew I was beginning to shed the obligation toward them. When you look forward to the time you have apart more than the time that you have together. This may not be as big a red flag as others mentioned. Sometimes when you are together for a long time you forget what it's like to part. And then when you are apart you yearn to be together again. But if you still prefer the time apart, then yes, something is wrong. When you get anxiety as soon as they get home. Oof. Reminds me of my stepdad. As soon as I'd hear the garage opening I'd have a little panic attack as I thought, okay, what am I doing that I shouldn't be doing right now? Didn't matter though. BC, the guy didn't need an actual reason to get angry. When you realize you've gone through the same cycle with them over and over, and talked about it every time, and they acknowledge it and promise to make changes but never do. Especially if you are fully going through that cycle, all the way down to the bottom, every time. You're going to fall back into bad habits, it's human nature. But, if you picture the cycle on a clock with 12 o'clock as good and 6 o'clock as really bad, you should start to catch those habits before you hit 6 o'clock. I feel like my hubby and I still get to 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock pretty often, but usually by 3 o'clock, we've caught the problem and started working on it to get back up to 12 o'clock. For example, I figured out several years ago that I get really impatient with my husband when I'm not spending enough time with him. I forget that he's charming and sweet and only remember his faults when he's away. This used to lead to me building up until I instigated a huge argument. That was the 6 o'clock for that cycle. Now I still sometimes get to 1 o'clock because I get lazy and not proactive about time together, but around 2 o'clock, I go ha, every little thing he does annoys me. Time for date night. It has been years since we got past 4 o'clock on any given issue. There's a good chance we will find a new cycle to hit rock bottom on at some point in our marriage, but hopefully having survived several others will help us get through that. When you start contemplating if the relationship is worth it and find yourself more annoyed by your partner's presence than enjoying it. Came here to say this. I'd add, if you find yourself fantasizing about being single again, your gut is right more often than you think. Asking friends if they think you should break up. At least for me this means you've made the decision, you just want it backed up by someone. Or better yet, your friends tell you that you should break up. Or your co-workers, acquaintances, relatives tell you that you should break up. I remember seeing an article about a study that found contempt to be the best indicator. So they recorded a bunch of couples having a conversation and then a few years later checked back in to see who was still together and who had split. They then looked over the recordings in search of trends. They found contempt, rolling of eyes, putting down the other person's interests or perspectives, etc., to be the #1 factor. Yeah, I agree with this. Other than the more on the nose stuff like being cheated on, it's the little things like eye rolls, the difference in eye contact, their interest in what you say feels obligated rather than genuine, you feel distant from them even when they're close, stuff like that. When you feel contempt for something they did. Contempt is the most toxic emotion. I have also read that disgust is one of the emotions that kills love and affection the most. Not as toxic as contempt, but possibly a worse sign for the state of your relationship. You realize there's a problem, and you're unwilling to work towards a solution. Laying awake with a nauseated feeling about how you can break it off. Literally feeling sick from constantly thinking about ending it because you know you need to, but just can't for various reasons. Sites are relatable for me right now. Resentment. You'd rather work late than go home to them. My wife used to work in a medical practice. One of the docs came in, almost half an hour late and grumpy. Someone said, "Cheer up, doc, it could always be worse." He snapped back, "Yeah, it could always be worse, I could still be at home." You stop talking to each other. In the early days of a relationship, you can't wait to tell them every little thing that happened to you. And then towards the end, you analyze everything like, does she need to know this? Maybe they get annoyed at you telling them random stories, or they won't stop talking about theirs, or you feel like anything you talk about will raise unnecessary questions and might result in a fight. When you realize every conversation you had with them was really just them venting their problems and never asking you about anything. When the idea of leaving is less painful than the idea of staying. Indifference. Ambivalence to how they treat you, what they do with their days' lives, whether or not you two have a future. If you're indifferent, you're likely done investing any energy into keeping things going. Yep. The opposite of love is not hate, the opposite of love is apathy. If they go through your phone, sit in silence when you cry, stop asking about how you're feeling, stop telling you when something bothers them. These ones seem obvious, but at the time I really didn't see the downhill spiral we were in. Trust your gut. The loss of trust is easy to pick up on. If they can't trust you for the little stuff, they won't for the big stuff. Just because I know she won't cheat on me doesn't mean I'm not hiding the aureus. When you upvote most of the comments in this post. Oops. Wondering about signs that it's over. About, maybe 6 months before a 7-year relationship ended, I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if she's happy. I don't know specifically what made me think it, but I did, and sure enough later that year she ended things. I didn't say anything at the time and wonder if it would have changed anything if I had. Avoidance of affection. Not always true. There are tons of reasons a person doesn't feel in the mood for a long time, like depression, weight gain, childbirth. Nope, can't do that day either. Work's really busting my balls ATM, but I'll let you know when I'm free. Apathy. Nearly impossible to come back from true apathy. For me, starting a relationship has been a rock-solid predictor for its demise. Every relationship that ends started. Never have relationships. When the communication stops. When it starts to feel like a job. When you have to make a pros and cons list of the person you're with. Stupid Cosmo shit. I remember an ex read about making lists of reasons you love each other. She got mad because my list was stuff about how beautiful her smile is and how she makes me laugh and stuff. Her complaint? This is all about how I make you feel. Yes, it's a list about why I feel the way I do about you. The icing was her list was exactly the same shit. Just started a giant ass fight. When answers become consistently shorter. For any relationship, friend, family, etc., you can tell a lot by how they answer things. Unless they always answer simple questions in short and concise ways, like I tend to do. That's it. That's the early sign. Man, that hit home. Can't stand the way your partner smells, apparently. Oh, and complaining about your partner to anybody and everybody. Don't do that shit. When you stop thinking can't wait to tell him/her about something funny, meaningful, or important that happened to you.